Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and hello if you are new here. Today we're going to be talking about mistakes that I made in therapy and what I would do differently knowing what I know now. So number one, the first mistake I made was going for a therapist because of his fame and prestige. So paying a lot of money for someone because they've been on TV, they're well known, and assuming that will equate to better quality therapy than someone that, for example, is just starting out. So what I did was, there was a therapist that I had watched growing up on a show. I won't say the name because this channel certainly isn't for calling anyone out. And it wasn't that he was a bad therapist. However, I went for him for the wrong reasons. And I didn't come across him on these kind of traditional therapy websites like Psychology Today. I just knew of him from TV. So I found his contact details and went ahead and had therapy with him without defining what kind of therapy we were doing. So we got into it. I shared most of my, traumatic experiences and memories with him. And lovely guy, like really nice guy. I thought he was kind. However, as the sessions progressed, I started to feel increasingly that I'd made the wrong decision. He was significantly higher in rates, which was understandable because of his prestige. But I wasn't feeling any progress, and I was also feeling that my challenges were being slightly demeaned, and I almost felt not taken seriously. And knowing what I know now and looking back, he was a therapist that specialized in CBT, but we weren't doing CBT. We weren't really doing any kind of specific therapy. We were just talking about my issues, and it was an online Zoom call. And there were many times where I felt that he was reading something else whilst we were on the call. So I didn't feel like I had his full attention. And I was left feeling that he took me on because it was an easy job for him to do. And it was really hurtful. So I decided not to proceed. And reflecting on the situation, my error in this was going for him for the wrong reasons, not clarifying the style of therapy we were doing, and not looking out for those red flags in the early stages. So that was one mistake that I made in therapy. What I would suggest for those of us that are starting out, because I had never really done therapy before this, so I didn't know what to look for. And I think what's really important, and I'm going to do a whole video on this, but what is really important is that you go for a therapist that you have a good connection with, that specializes in the kind of therapy that you have decided you need. So it does involve you doing a lot of research on the different modalities out there. Once you've decided which one really resonates with you, you then go about finding the therapist. Don't worry about how experienced they are. One of the most effective therapy I ever had was with someone who was still studying towards their PhD. I believe she was in her 20s, and exceptional gifted therapists. Very, very reasonable rate as well. So rate isn't always an indication that they are good. Someone can be a lot lower and much better. I've seen that firsthand. So don't look at those things. Very important. Number 2, committing to a pack of 5 sessions after an initial call. So there was a therapist that I spoke to on a phone call. So it wasn't a Zoom call. It wasn't an in-person meeting. It was more of a clarity call. And because I was so eager to get started, I liked her enough and got a bit ahead of myself and agreed to a session of 5 with her. I'm very lucky because I hadn't paid it yet, but I was literally about to, but then our call started. And on the phone call, I felt completely different. There was not a connection between us. I felt that she, similarly to the one I mentioned a moment ago, wasn't fully engaged and listening to the issues that I was having. And halfway through the call, I just knew in my soul that it was not the right therapist for me. So I had to then come off the call because I didn't know how to say that to her. So I kind of went along with it for the remainder of the call. And then I emailed her after to say, unfortunately, upon reflection, I no longer feel this is right for me. Thankfully, she was understanding, but she then charged me for a one-off session, which was much higher than the sessions would have been if I had gone ahead with the pack of 5, because a single session was £120 and the pack of 5 equated to £80 per session. So it ended up being a little bit more than what I had thought I would be paying for one session. So I would never do that again. And I would advise you to also not agree to packs of 5. I would urge you to have a session, a paid session, to have the initial clarity call, have a paid session, and make your decision after 3 sessions if you want to continue or not. That's how I would do things. The third thing, which I kind of touched on just now in point 2, was not speaking up. That's an issue that I have had in my personal life, one of the reasons why I came to therapy, and the issue is still there in therapy. And I think it kind of comes from having people-pleasing tendencies, sort of wanting to be really nice, being very careful of not hurting people's feelings, all of this lovely feminine, wounded feminine energy that a lot of us have. So in therapy, for example, those 2 examples I gave, I found it difficult to address these things. And looking back, I feel that that is a mistake because you are paying these people. You are paying these people. They need to do a good job for you. You have every right to state your needs to these people. These are the people that are actually meant to help you learn skills such as assertiveness, boundary setting, expressing your needs. They should, we'd like to think, understand when you want to address more difficult things, such as, I don't feel you're listening. I don't feel you're engaged. These are things that actually would help them too. It would help them hear honest feedback because the chances are they're probably also working with people that don't say it. Maybe they don't even realize that they're not engaged properly or they're not coming across as engaged. And by telling them, they actually then have a chance to reflect on themselves and think, you know what, in my next session with my next client, I'm going to make sure they are aware how engaged I am. And you will then help that person, the next client that they have. So it is so selfless to speak up. So don't think that you're being selfish by pointing out these things, because it is actually to everyone's benefit. It benefits everybody by saying these things. If they take it badly, it really is on them. You do not owe them anything. You are paying to get help. You should get help and you should use it as practice to speak up, because the more you do it in therapy, the easier it's going to be outside of therapy. So that is mistake number 3. Mistake number 4, starting too late. I started my therapeutic journey. By the way, it's never too late to start. But when I look back, I think I wish I had have started when I was 16 years old, because it would have been a preventative measure for a lot of the wrong turns, so to speak, I took in my early 20s. I would have been preempted in therapy and would be a lot further ahead in that regard. It's almost like the stock market. It's like the earlier you start, the better, but starting now is better than never starting at all. So it's not about shaming anyone or shaming yourself. If you agree, if you feel the same that you started a bit too late, it's not about shame. And it's also very important to remember that we all do the best we can with the information that we had at the time. I didn't know about all of these different therapeutic modalities when I was 16. I also didn't have the financial means to invest in therapy to the extent that I do now. So it wouldn't have really been feasible. I think in a perfect world, sure, I would have started when I was 16. However, I didn't. But I kind of wish that somehow it would have been possible. So yeah, that's kind of mistake. And I say with quotation marks because it's almost like just a lesson learnt that would be kind of impossible to have known back then. But nevertheless, I included it here. And number 5, when I was embarking upon finding a group for group analytical therapy, I spoke with one therapist who I actually got along with well. I was comparing her a lot to my previous psychodynamic therapist because these kinds of therapies are quite similar because they're purely talking. There's no feeling into your emotions. It's very much discussing your patterns and all of that. And the main differences between my psychodynamic therapist and this group analytical therapist was that my psychodynamic therapist was a little cold. And when I say cold, I actually mean it in the best way possible. I mean it in the way that she was not going along with me. She was very present in herself and expressionless. Like her facial expressions did not change based on mine. And that really worked for me. I know it wouldn't work for everyone. She was unfiltered, but always to the point, always hitting the nail on the head. Whereas this group analytical therapist wouldn't do that. She would be very laughy and jokey and warm. So arguably a better way of doing things, but it didn't work for me. Okay. So I took this as she was the problem. And I went and found a different group therapist and found that actually it wasn't her. It was the style of group analytical therapy. And what I mean by that is group analytical therapy. You do one-to-one sessions with the group leader or group therapist for probably about 2 months before joining the group. And now I realize what the issue was. It wasn't the way that they approach you and the way that they approach these one-to-one sessions is they are assessing your suitability for the group, which of course I knew. But the way that it can sometimes come across as well is that they're not listening to you properly because their attention is split. And I understand this now because they are looking at you and thinking of the other 5 to 12 group members, their circumstances, how your circumstances relate to them, patterns that you have that could clash with the group members. There's a lot going on in their mind. And I think while psychodynamic therapy and group analytical therapy are very much similar because they're both analytical, the one-to-one psychodynamic sessions are very focused only on you and your issues. So therefore, you can go a lot deeper into them. And there's no random sidetracking from the therapist like there is in the one-to-one group analytical sessions. I often found myself delving deep into my patterns and fears, and out of nowhere, a random question would be asked. Well, it seemed random to me, and it would feel like I'm sort of being cut off. And I felt this way with both group analytical therapists. So now I look back and I think, maybe I should have stuck with the first one because I actually preferred her. In fact, it's difficult to say I preferred her because I feel she understood me more on a basic level. And I feel like I liked her as a person more. But what I like about the one that I'm actually going to join next week is that she resembles some of the traits of my psychodynamic therapist in the sense that she is very grounded in herself. She's a very serious therapist. And I need that. I need a serious therapist. I can't feel taken seriously by a friendly approach. And that is why possibly it all has worked out and this is the right way. But I think, knowing what I know now, if I could turn back time, I'd probably stick with the first one, and just knowing that the only reason she's being irritating is because she has a lot of things to consider here, and it's not as simple as my previous one-to-one sessions. But we live, we learn, and I'm here to share so you don't need to make the same mistakes. So let me know what you think. I'm really curious to hear who else has done psychodynamic therapy, group analytical therapy, what your thoughts are, because I am yet to embark on group therapy. I've completed the 2 months of one-to-one sessions with the second group analyst that I met with, and I'm literally going to be joining on Tuesday. So it's going to be Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and they're 1.5 hour sessions. And I think there's going to be 6 group members. I'm the youngest, so I'm also the youngest child in my family. So I'm really curious to see how it all goes. So I'm going to keep you all updated, of course. And yes, I look forward to speaking to you all soon and seeing you in the comment section. And I hope you have an amazing week.